Welcome everyone. So today I will be going through the revised CSEC syllabus for social studies. Now the CSEC Social Studies syllabus has been revised since May-June 2025 examination. So what you would have realized, a person sitting in the examination in 2025 May-June would have sat a totally different setting up of the syllabus, right? Now I am here to walk you through the new revised syllabus. And before we get started with the new syllabus, what you would have realized in the old organization, it would have consisted of three parts, which would be section A, individual, family, and society and government. Section B would look at sustainable development and regional integration, of course, which would consist of a essay for regional integration. And then section C would consist of three essay topics, which would be on communication, tourism, and consumers affairs, where you would have to select one essay to write on one of the following topics. Now the new revised syllabus looks at two sections. The paper is divided into two sections, which is section A, which looks at individual, family, and society. And with that, you're able to write mostly short answers for this area. Government, of course, individual and the family, society, and government. Then section B will look at sustainable development and use of resources, which still looks at the development and use of resources, human resources, and of course regional development looks at sustainable resources. Regional integration here, or regional development, is of course regional integration. Now with this, you do write essay, but not so much as the previous paper. Now when it comes on to the area where it speaks of regional development, you realize that communication isn't there, and also tourism and consumers affairs totally isn't in the new syllabus, right? But you do get a small bit of communication and tourism, right? You do get a small bit of this to study, because they do ask questions related to a bit about tourism and communication as it pertains to regional development. And when we're looking at regional development, it's still regional integration, so we can't hide away from that aspect of it. So you need to know terminologies relating to communication and tourism. I'm going to walk you through now the breaking down of the syllabus. Let's go. Alright, so now we're jumping right into it. So here we're looking at section A, individual, family, and society. Now the breaking down here, what you need to focus on, definitely major functions of the family. Yes, look at the functions of the family. You also want to look at terminologies related to the family, such as being able to define the different types of families, different types of family unions. The family tree, of course, is a must. Yes, the family tree, they do place that in the examination. It was in the 2026 examination paper. So you need to look at family types, family unions, and the relationship among family members, such as the family tree. You then want to look at the traditional roles and traditional marriages of the family. You then also want to look at the contemporary, as stated, the roles of both children and adults within the Caribbean family. So you have to look at their roles. You then want to also ensure that you study factors that contribute, this is a must, factors that contribute to the roles, changing roles of family members in society. And also you want to look at the results of the changing roles. So with that, we have role conflict, identity crisis, communication breakdown, marginalization of males, right? Those are a few of the pointers that normally comes in the examination paper. I do advise you, even though you do your SBA, to know these terminologies as it relates to your research questions. Yes, you need to remember aspects of your research, the SBA, because that is there. We then want to look at preparation of parenthood, right? Definitely is a must, preparation for parenthood. Effects of parenting, effective parenting, qualities of effective parents. You then want to look at social issues. And when we look at social issues, this looks at the SBA, because you know with your SBA you have to look at or select a social issue to do your SBA on. Alright, so this is a must area. Contemporary social issues is another topic that is explored. And of course, this is where your SBA comes in, right? So you look at contemporary social issues facing the family. We then want to look at laws related to the family, such as inheritance, child care, divorce, legal separation, domestic violence. What does the law speaks as it relates to these areas? And then now we also want to look at culture. You cannot leave out culture. You must study culture, because culture always comes on the examination paper. They always ask you about culture. So here we have cultural diversity and of the Caribbean region, right? You must study cultural diversity, know the terminology for cultural diversity, know the reason for the existence of culture, the order in which the ancestors came to the Caribbean, right? The impact of culture, right? The various cultures on the Caribbean family. So culture is a must to study. Cultural heritage, and of course the transfer of cultural heritage, right? That must be studied. So culture is a must. And you know culture links with sports. Now we then want to look at social groups and their characteristics. Yeah, types of social groups, characteristics of social groups. And when we talk about the characteristics, we're looking at common goals, establishing of behaviors, cooperation in the group, sanctions for the groups. You then want to look at definitely requirements for group cohesion, which consists of leadership, cooperation, loyalty, just to name a few. Social control, it is a must that we study social control, terminologies such as folkways, norms, mores, rules, sanctions. You must know them. Must know the difference between them as well. We then move along to interactions among group members. So this is for social groups, competition, conflict, characteristics of members of groups. We then want to move along to look at social institutions, the different types of institution, characteristics of the institutions, functions of each institution. You need to know them, the functions of each, why are they there. Then, of course, after we want to move into, so we finish social groups and institutions, we move into government. Now, government is always on the paper, always in the syllabus. So we look at the two forms of government, right? Forms of government. Just of back history, you want to look at the types of governmental systems, right? Which consists of crown colony, constitutional monarchy, and the republic. Now, constitutional monarchy and republic is always asked, right? You always need to know about them as it relates to the examination. Government. Now, the structure of government, we also want to look at the branches of government, which is the structure of government, right? The three branches are legislature, executive, and judiciary. We need to know them, right? And we, of course, we call them the principles or the separation of powers, also known as the branches of government. The function of government, such as for the economy, for security, regulation. You also want to know terminologies related to government, such as the constitution, right? Democracy, authoritarian. Terminologies related to government, universal adult suffrage, right? Human rights, and of course, rights of the child, the role of the ombudsman, and so forth. These are information that you need to remember. And of course, we cannot leave out the electoral system. You must know about the electoral system, yes. So we have to study the electoral process, how a election is taken. We want to also study the two main electoral system, which is first past the post and the proportional representative system. The countries that perform these electoral systems, you must know them. And of course, preparation for election. No terminology such as propaganda, the difference between facts, opinions, and propaganda. You must know them. As it relates to government, can even include gerrymandering. Here it requires in the syllabus, it looks a bit at decision making, the decision making process, right? So it starts off with defining the problem, identifying the limiting factors. I'm cutting it short. Going to best alternatives. You just want to ensure that you study the decision making process as well. And that comes all under government election, outcome of elections, voter terminology such as voters apathy. You want to study those as well. All right. Characteristics of good governance, can't leave that out. Characteristics of good governance, you must know them, such as transparency, accountability, good governance, and of course, role or duties, our civic duties as citizens, right? Characteristics of good citizenship. It's a part of the syllabus. You want to ensure that you study that area. And that is for section A, which more so again looks at individual, family, and society, and of course government. So we can't leave out government. Then now for section B consists of sustainable development and use of resources. Now, in this area, we want to look at population. We want to know terminologies such as the sex structure, occupation, ethnicity, religion, dependency, ratio, life expectancy, right? Factors or characteristics of a population. We have to know them. We then want to look at sources of population statistics. Where do we get our statistics relating to the population? You need to know them, such as your census. What is a census? Right? We can get it through birth certificates from the registrar, marriage certificates, death certificates, immigration and custom areas. We then need to look at the use of the population statistics, what it is used for, such as for housing, healthcare, development, right, in various areas for the citizens. So we must study the population, factors influencing population distribution and density, the physical factors, human factors, right? And also the impact of them. Now, here is where I want you to take major note of. This is where the change, a major change, come in the syllabus. Of course, culture is always there, but culture needs to definitely draw closer to it. But now, the map. CXC has now introduced the map into Social Studies CSEC. Now here you must be able to kind read the Caribbean map, right? So here we're looking at interpretation of the map showing population distribution and density. Now under this we need to know about the chlorophyll, I might not pronounce it right, and also the dot maps, right? Now, as it relates to the map, you need to know the reading, such as the title, the north arrow, the key slash legend, the scale and border of your map. You need to take note of them, and your teacher should guide you through this area as well. You need to know to read the map, right? The map is a must, may I tell you. It is a must now in CSEC Social Studies. You must know the map. Also, continuing under sustainable and use of resources, you want to look at population changes, factors that has led to population change, such as migration, birth and death rates, and the impact of them, right, on the Caribbean society. Again, you need to study demographics such as birth rate, death rate, and rate of natural increase, net migration, you need to be able, under demography, population, you need to be able to kind of read graphs, charts, pie charts. Yes, sometimes, not just sometimes, both on paper 2 and paper 1, you'll get bar graph, pie charts, right, line graphs to read. It's not hard, but you just need to be able to kind of read them as it relates to population, because they'll ask you questions regarding the population using these charts. So you must be able to kind of read the charts as well, tell what they're stating, right? Okay, all right, so those are some of the main areas you want to look for when studying human resources. Of course, migration, right? Consequences of migration, push and pull factors of migration, reasons for migration, and I'm just looking through the syllabus here. Impact of migration on the Caribbean. Then now we look at human resources and developing of our human resources. This is the other aspect. So the development of human resources, what we do with them, and how do we develop our human resources, the importance of developing human resources. Employment, unemployment, underemployment factors must be studied as well. Career opportunities, the different types of career industries, such as your primary industry, secondary, tertiary, and this you want to know the quaternary industry. You also want to look at the location of major natural resources when it comes on to renewable and of course non-renewable resources. People, we must study the renewable and non-renewable resources, the Caribbean countries that have the different resources. Going back to the Caribbean map, studying of the map quickly, you want to ensure on the studying of the map as well, to identify the Greater Antilles, the Lesser Antilles, and different parts on the map you need to be able to can identify. Use of our resources within the Caribbean, you need to know that use of the resources. As stated earlier, which Caribbean island have the more resources, less resources, and the different types of resources, right? You need to know sustainable development, use of sustainable development. Can't leave out this part, improper practices, right? And use of our resources, such as poor farming, degradation or erosion, overcropping, monocropping, need to be studied as well. Now, you also want to ensure that you study climate changes, consequences of climate change, such as global warming, right? Yes, what is global warming, causes and consequences of global warming? Definitely that is a must. You then want to look at, again, changes of the climate, impact of climate on the following, such as tourism, agriculture, forestry, and water supply. Regional and international response to these changes. We want to study, of course, recycling, conservation, alternative energy. Yes. And these are concerns as it relates to the natural environment. We also want to look at the natural changes, natural disasters that can occur due to the changes within the climate, right? Now, class, you want to pay great attention to your compass. Yes, look at the directions as it relates to your compass, and also study lines of latitude and lines of longitude. You must be able to can speak about them, lines of longitude, lines of latitude. And even under that, tropics, the different tropics, yes, as it relates to the map, because as we're going through, these are things that comes up in the examination, right? It's still linking to the map, and this aspect of it, 19 speaks of the compass, and we know we're going back to the map right here. So I'm just including tropics in it because it does speaks to it as well. As I told you, the Greater and Lesser Antilles, the grouping of them, the Eastern Caribbean states, right? You also want to make note of them in studying. You want to now narrow down, and this is also a change in the syllabus, different definition for development and ways of measuring development. So under this, take note, right? Ways of measuring development. So we're going to look at the economic development, social development, and human development. So under the economic development, you want to know about gross domestic product, GDP. Yes, that came on the 2026 May-June paper, right? National product. You want to look at the per capita income and cost of living as it relates to definition of development and ways of measuring development. Class, this is new, right? You want to look at social development, which we are familiar with: education, literacy rate, life expectancy, infant mortality, right? Availability of social services. But when it comes on to measuring the economic development, that part is new to the syllabus. Development, human development, we're used to that. You then want to look at factors which influence the development of various industries and the contribution of these industries. So we're now looking at factors that affect these industries, such as investment, marketing, infrastructure development policies, contributions of various industries now. For example, agriculture, forestry, they all contribute. So what they contribute to foreign exchange earnings for the countries, Caribbean countries, providing direct employment, indirect employment as well, which looks at the linkages to various sectors, right? Yes, such as transportation, arts, tourism. Those will be the indirect employment. Then we look at government revenue, such as tax and licensing. Here looks a bit at communication, where you describe how the information and communication technology impacts the industries in the Caribbean. This is why I tell you that communication doesn't come by itself as a topic. It now goes into regional integration. Alright, so for regional integration, section B, right, of the sustainable development, it looks at the development of various industries. That part is a part of regional integration, right? And then now jumping into communication technology, here it looks at the use of communication technology and its industry, where we have greater accessibility, it reduced business costs and so forth.